LYNNE KITEI is an internationally acclaimed physician, healthcare educator for over 40 years. She pushed aside her very accomplished medical career to pursue the more important questions facing mankind. Specifically, what was the mile-wide delta boomerang V-shaped object that was witnessed by over 10,000 people on March 13, 1997, over Phoenix, Arizona? She photographed and filmed this event, which is now hailed as America's most well-documented, largest mass anomalous sighting in modern U.S. history. Dr. KITEI was the chief clinical consultant at the Imaging Prevention Wellness Center, part of Arizona Heart Institute in Phoenix, Arizona, focusing on early disease detection and prevention. She came forward in 2004 after 7 years of anonymity and intense research as a key witness in the still unexplained mass UFO events throughout Arizona, known as the Phoenix Lights. She has appeared on hundreds of international TV, radio, and television programs, including Coast to Coast AM, and the History, Science, Travel, Discovery, and National Geographic channels. Dr. KITEI recently released the 20th anniversary of the best-selling book that she wrote called Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Guide, a Skeptic's Discovery, that we are not alone in the universe. Dr. KITEI also produced an award-winning documentary film, The Phoenix Lights, Beyond Top Secret. And her latest groundbreaking book for all ages to share and read together is called The Phoenix Lights, UFOs and Crop Circle graphic novel and activities coloring book that's available on Amazon. Dr. KITEI is a dear friend and a mentor to me. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Dr. KITEI.
Thank you.
I'm here in the room if you need me. Just mention it.
Okay, everyone can hear? Yes? Well, I just got to give a little thing beforehand. We had a fantastic turnout yesterday for the Free Friday. There was about 200 people there, and it went really well, but it's about an hour and a half lecture, and everybody enjoyed it so much, I want to share it with you today. So I may be talking a little fast, so I apologize beforehand because I want to get it all in because it's really cool. And what else is cool is that, ironically, and I don't believe in coincidence anymore, my life's work has been community education of vital health issues for over 40 years, particularly inspiring future generations to wake up to the reality of substance abuse and AIDS and teen pregnancy. In fact, my award-winning programs are being distributed by Discovery Education as we speak. So when the Phoenix Lights fell in my lap, literally and figuratively, without any knowledge or interest in the topic at all, as a scientist, I felt compelled to document and compile as much credible data as I could. As a physician, I thought it was important and a first-hand witness, a key witness with the only 35mm photographs of these anomalous aerial phenomena that have been authenticated by university and military optical experts as true unknowns. It was important to me to come forward also after 7 years of anonymity and pushing my whole medical career aside for 7 years to find a logical explanation, which I have yet to find, and ended up with a 750-page journal that ultimately I felt I was obliged to share it, also as a physician, to let people know that they're not alone, that they're not crazy. Even though most anomalies can be explained, only a small percentage cannot. Just because we don't have the technology yet to definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. We may just be looking on an AM dial for an FM frequency. So it was important to come forward as a physician to let people know it's vital that when you have a paranormal experience, it's real to you. And it's really important to share, or else it festers. And it's healing to be able to share with even one person, and I welcome people to go to the website, the Phoenix Lights website, Phoenix Lights Network website and Facebook page, and message me. I take confidentiality very seriously as a physician. It's healing, it's cathartic to share. and certainly as an educator. What's really interesting for anyone that's in the Philly area, I was born and raised in Philly, went to Temple University Med School, and actually got the idea while I was seeing indigent people in the neighborhood at Broad and Lehigh when I was at St. Chris Hospitals for Children. Why aren't they going out and actually giving exams and immunizations to kids that aren't coming to them? And they thought, wow, this is a great idea. We got an elective together, that they had a nurse and a doctor, and myself went out and actually knocked on doors, boarded up. I couldn't believe the people actually lived there in the squalor and disease. And I thought, how do you reach these people? And they had one TV and it was on. And I just rolled it around in my brain, how can you reach these people? In my residency, I went to NBC here at KYW, and I just shared my idea to try to reach these people with a quick news piece. And they thought, this is great. And I don't believe in coincidence anymore, because a week later, Jessica Savage, if anybody remembers that, was doing a week-long series on women's medical problems, and they asked me to do it with her. How fabulous was that? Never did anything like that in my life, but I went right in there, and it was so successful that they asked me to stay on as the health reporter, and then I was asked to do a syndication, international syndication, of like 120 60-second pieces on how to prevent heart attack, to what to do with a burn, and so forth, which was showing in Phoenix when we moved there in 1980, at CBS, and then NBC there asked me to start a program for them called Health Team 12. USA Cable as well. I don't know if people remember The Great American Homemaker, starring Vicki Lawrence. And by the mid-'80s, not only was I expert on researching, writing, going out in the field, and actually directing the shoot, going back and editing with the editor, and then being on the set to answer questions with the anchor, whether it was Jessica Savage or Mark Krim or whatever. But I was also seeing kids in the practice, in our private practice, that were drowning in substance abuse and wanted to wake them up to the reality. So I combined kids that had been there, experts in the field, and my other hat, celebrities. And we actually have Sylvester Stallone and Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan and the original cast from Beverly Hills 90210 and Paula Abdul and my AIDS and teen pregnancy and substance abuse. But I was bringing in this other hat because some of you know that I was in professional musical theater before I went to medical school. I toured with Gordon McRae in Oklahoma and Betty Grable and Guys and Dolls, and understudied Barbara Eden in Sound of Music, and actually the Valley Forge Music Fair, Camden County Music Fair here at Playhouse in the Park. I did Alice in Wonderland with Sherman Hemsley, Mr. Jefferson, before he was famous. And another little aside is that I won the part of Florence, Arizona in the hit Coen Brother 20th Century Fox film, Raising Arizona. And someone actually came up to me at one of the MUFON meetings and said, there's a reference to your character and UFOs. And I didn't remember. This was like after I came forward in 2004, in the late 2000s. And I said, really? And I went back to look, and if anybody knows Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter and John Goodman and Frances McDormand were in the film, and Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter, it was a black comedy, couldn't conceive, so they figure, why can't they take one of the Arizona Quints? And there was a press conference afterwards, and one of the reporters was standing in front of our house with my husband and said, "There's a rumor that your son was abducted by UFOs. Is there any truth to that?" And my husband says, "Oh, please, son, please don't print that. If his mama reads that, she'll lose all hope," which is totally opposite from my own take on the Phoenix Lights. Can't talk about other things, but I can talk about the Phoenix Lights. And in 21 years, there has not been not one credible report of harm, threat, or abduction associated with Phoenix Lights. That's really important, too. But I urge you to take a look at the Phoenix Lights Network. Once I came forward in 2004 and squeezed down that 750-page journal to 250 pages, and in the Phoenix Lights Network. The website has just been growing and growing and evolving. There is so much wonderful, credible, compelling data on there to explore and consider. Consider this. We have come such a long way in 21 years since the Phoenix Lights. We had no idea then, that we do now with the Hubble telescope and the Kepler, that there are billions of other galaxies out there with trillions of their own stars, with their own suns and planets. And the ingredients of life are out there. Oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, amino acids. And when a star bursts, those organic materials go all over the universe. Astrophysicists call it panspermia, and probably landed here as well. But the truth of it is that our one Milky Way galaxy is 14 to 16 billion years old. Our solar system is a very young solar system. It's only 4 to 6 billion years old. There are now scientists postulating that there could be intelligent, sentient entities, not just 100 years ahead of us, and think what we've done in 100 years, not 1,000 years ahead of us, but billions of years ahead of us. What an incredible thought. What's out there and what may be visiting us, including the Phoenix Lights. Anyway, just as a little aside, because that was an awesome thought in itself, it's also important to note that when I was interviewing many of the witnesses, there were a few of them that had near-death experiences as children that was reawakened by the mass sighting. That really took me aback, because I did too. We won't have time to get into it today, but I share the whole thing out there in the book. But I can share that when I came back, not only did I have knowledge way beyond my years at 8 years old, but I also had such an appreciation of how lucky I was to live life here on Earth, and that it was important to try to help make this world a better world, and I've been trying ever since. I also came back with a knowing, not a belief, a knowing that we are not alone. And then we fast forward to Raising Arizona in '87. Now, that took place 10 years, the reference to my character, 10 years before the Phoenix Lights mass sighting. Also, the cinematographer, Barry Sonnenfeld, went on to do Big and When Harry Met Sally and The Addams Family. He also created and directed the Men in Black series, which actually premiered in 1997, the same year as the Phoenix Lights. Coincidence? Well, today we're going to be talking about a lot of other coincidences, but mostly inspiring future generations with the Phoenix Lights. I've been inspiring future generations with the reality of vital health issues, and I felt it was absolutely imperative that I share, ultimately, after 7 years of anonymity, the reality of this vital issue in the media, in books, in documentary, education, I'm working on a curriculum, and celebrities, bringing in that other hat. Now, let me show you. This is, so you get an idea. We live mountainside in Paradise Valley, very high on the mountain, nestled in a mountain range, had a panoramic view of the city skyline, so we know what planes look like and helicopters and streetlights and car lights. Anyway, let me just share this because you're going to be seeing this, and I want to share, first of all, this is a car on the road, okay? Okay, I'm going to need a pointer. The car, did this work? No. Okay. Jen, if you're around, pointer would be great. Let me go back. Okay. If you can see, there's a car on the road there that's reflecting. The orbs, the Phoenix Lights orbs, are self-contained. The light does not extend outside the edge, and you'll see that. Now, to the right of the car, you see skylights there that are on a house down the street. Now, what's significant about that is if you look up, there actually are mountain ranges. Oh, thank you so much, Jen. Thank you. Always comes through. Thank you. Okay. Oh, wrong way. Okay, here we go. Here's South Mountain, just south of the airport. Here's the Estrella Mountain Range, okay? Now, serendipitously, also, 6 months before the mass sighting, I was invited to present my substance abuse prevention education program to the Gila Bend Indian Reservation, which is very sacred ground, right in between South Mountain and there's a basin there, right in between South Mountain and the Estrellas. And after the mass sighting, as you'll soon see, I noticed that these phenomena, these anomalous aerial phenomena, kept popping up right in that area. So in the pictures you'll see, because some of them are at night, these skylights are right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. So I called them up and I said, you know, did anybody see strange lights on March 13th? And they started to giggle. And I said, is that funny? They said, are you kidding? We've been looking up at them for centuries. We call them sky beings, light beings, sky people. And that opened up a whole new world to me. I had no idea. And when I started looking into it, I realized that indigenous cultures worldwide have, for centuries, believed that there are other intelligences, whether interstellar or interdimensional, coming to visit us. Even the Hopi in Arizona have protocols to invite these anomalies in. And some think these orbs are ancestors, spirit world, to come to give them knowledge and comfort and inspiration. And I certainly have been inspired by this. Well, they also showed me, okay, good, thank you, that on the mountains there are petroglyphs etched out, centuries old. And this one really got me because it's, as you can see, it's 3 lights, 3 orbs in a pyramid formation. Why? Because 2 years before the mass sighting, that's exactly what my husband, who's also a physician and a healthy skeptic, and I saw right outside our bedroom window. As I said, we're really high on the mountain. Let me just quickly try to describe what happened, because I always go back to this sighting, because I saw the Phoenix lights up close and personal and had an experience. Anyway, I was taking a bath again. It was the night before my birthday, so it was a little coincidence there, and my husband was in the other room. One wall of our bedroom is a window. So he was standing at the window actually talking to my mother-in-law. She called to wish me a happy birthday from Philadelphia. And suddenly, and he was on several state and hospital medical boards, nothing ever ruffled his feathers, and I hear him yell, "Get over here quick, what the hell is that?" And I grab my towel, I go running to the window, and little below us, actually about 50, 75 feet off the ground, were 3 amber orbs in a pyramid formation, one on top and 2 closely aligned underneath. And my first thought, coming from a video background, was run to get my camera, but I didn't want to miss anything. And you'll hear, and I'm sure there's people in the audience that have had this experience, you're in awe and wonder. You don't want to move. You don't know how long it's going to last. I tried to take everything in, the size, the shape, the color. They were about 3 to 6 feet each. They were oval shaped, like an egg on its side. There were 3 distinct objects. And I called them an orb because the light did not extend outside the edge, and the color within each orb was a uniform amber color throughout. It didn't glare at all. Every other light out there glared, house lights, street lights, so forth. These did not. Very mesmerizing, very soothing, and I thought, you know what, if I don't get a picture of this, no one's going to believe it. And I go running to the closet. I kept a 35mm camera, thank goodness, handy for our beautiful sunsets. I collect sunsets, and I go to grab it, and my husband calls me back. He says, "Get over here quick, one of them is disappearing." As we watched, and again, I always go back to this, it started to shrink without budging, very, very, very slowly, mechanically, as if there was an intelligence behind it. And it was like a P shape and then disappeared for our eyes. But it still felt like it was there. Where did it go? I went, jumped out on the balcony, got a picture of the 2 lower orbs, and immediately noticed an eerie silence, as if time had stopped. It was just bizarre. And it took me till after the mass sighting 2 years later to share this with someone. But as I was standing there staring at these 2 lower orbs, it felt like something was watching me. And going through my mind, I was thinking, who are you? What are you? Do you know that I'm here? I'd love to meet you. And the next thing I remember, the left bottom orb started to disappear. And I quickly shot a picture of that. Now, that was the only one that turned out at the time, but for me, not only was it confirmation that we did see something unusual, but I caught one disappearing, shrinking. And one's still there. It was an incredible picture to capture on 35mm. Well, I didn't even know who to show it to. And I wondered for 2 years what this advanced technology was. Didn't see a thing similar. And finally, actually a year after the mass sighting, there was another extraordinary sighting. We have video of it in the documentary, of straight lines and mirror images, and the final thing was this giant pyramid of 3 lights in the same spot. If you can get that picture back on, thank you. In the same spot, right there. And I was directed to, actually I told them that, be ready. I knew a couple days before they started to appear again for the first time after the mass sighting, and we got video from north, south, east, and west, which was pretty uncanny in itself. The same people that took it during the mass sighting of March 13th, 1997 that we'll get to. But at any rate, I was directed to MUFON's own Navy optophysicist, Dr. Bruce Maccabee. And I sent him the video, and as an afterthought, I sent the first and the last picture. And he calls me up a couple weeks later. He said, you told me that that close sighting you had in 95 was just a couple of minutes. I said, right. He said, ask your husband. Confer. And I did. He said 2, 3, 4 minutes tops. He said, I don't know about that. I said, what do you mean? He says, first of all, the same exact, and this is significant, the same exact phenomena that I would capture head-on turning a V 2 months before the mass sighting and footage during the mass sighting, the signature footage, it's the only one that's been analyzed as a true unknown, is in the same exact location. Here's those skylights. Same exact location as 2 months before and during the mass sighting, okay? Also, the phenomena moved, okay? He said, but that's not the most significant thing. The most significant thing is the skyline. There's many lights on, groups of lights that are on in the first picture that are off in the last picture. And he does a meticulous analysis, and actually these are the lights that were on in the first and off in the last picture, and there's even more. We did it again with higher technology just a couple years ago for National Geographic, and there's even more lights that were on or off here. And he tells me to do an experiment, stand approximately where I was standing the night of February 6, 1995, take the sunset, take the skyline one night every hour, the next night every half hour, the next night every 15 minutes. We'll see when the lights start going out. Now, I usually take a bath between 7 and 8 when we're home. So let's be conservative and say the starting point is 8 o'clock. The pictures indicate that the lights start going out at 9 o'clock, and the last picture is indicative of 10:30, 11 o'clock. And he says to me, and I couldn't get my head around anything that he was saying, he says to me, can I present this case at the upcoming 1999 MUFON International Symposium in Washington, D.C.? I said, Dr. McAfee, this is your baby, go for it, but please leave my name out of it, which he did. And he presented it in 1999, that there were hours in between those pictures, not minutes. And what in his conclusion was it was the first, and as far as we know, the only authenticated photographic evidence of missing time. Now, I give that as a little aside. There is so much to this story, but I thought since he's connected with MUFON, you would appreciate it. And what I told you is what I remember from that sighting, but there's a lot more to that story, too, that you can read in the book. Anyway, you know, what an awesome thought. I could not wrap my head around it. Actually, I didn't even share this information until the second edition of the book in 2010. I also didn't see anything similar after 95 until 2 months before the mass sighting. And I apologize again that I'm talking so fast, but I want to get a lot in for you. Anyway, there were 3 orbs far west behind the city, and I'm noticing, wait a minute, they're huge, they're in a line formation, equidistant from each other, they're amber, and they started imploding from right to left. And I thought, wow, that's pretty similar to 95, but at a distance. The next night, my husband was at a board meeting, hospital board meeting, and I see the same 3 lights far south. And I thought, okay, they were actually below the mountain, in front of the mountain, because there's red blinking lights on the mountain to alert people coming into the airport. And I figured, enough, I'm getting video of this. I grab my video camera, get about 18 seconds worth. The battery goes dead. I run inside, hook it up, go outside, they're gone. About a half hour later, about 8:30, my husband comes up the drive. I said, remember I told you about the 3 lights far north last night? Well, about a half an hour ago, they were right in front of South Mountain. As I'm pointing like this, they reappear in the same spot. I thought, whoa, I got to get pictures of this, which was great, because I have to tell you that the video does not do the lights justice. They're much smaller, they're white, they flicker. Nonetheless, the formations are very compelling for the trained eye, but 35 millimeter, it's in the negative. And I run upstairs, I go to grab the negative. As I'm ready to shoot the 3, suddenly 6 across appear, massive span, over a mile wide. I started to shake. Actually, this next picture, please, shows wavy because I was shaking. And I kept clicking away. And as I'm clicking away, actually the second picture is really important, because 2 months later during the mass sighting, thousands of people would describe 5 lights in a V formation with 2 trailing. And then, whoops, the last one, is actually a V. The thing turned, and I did not sleep well that night. I got up the next morning, I figured there must be a logical explanation. Called around, found air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor International Airport that saw the same thing at the same time I was photographing it, that were very forthcoming initially, and shared with me that not only did it, when it popped up, and there's a 30-mile radius around the airport, it's called Class B restricted airspace. Any object that comes into that airspace, particularly 1,000 feet altitude that this was, must call into the tower, and no one did. So they looked on radar, did not show up on radar, took their binoculars to look, and in their own words, there were 6 points of light, totally equidistant from each other, massive span over a mile wide, that seemed to be attached to something, but they couldn't quite see what it was attached to or had a force field holding these things in rock-solid, equidistant formation. And one of them was a meteorologist, and actually said the whole thing turned as a unit against the wind and then elevated slowly and moved in synchrony behind South Mountain. So I said, so what was it? And there was silence. And then one of them says, beats me. I said, you're air traffic controllers. You're supposed to know what's in our airspace. They had no clue. We kept in contact. I continued to photograph these things. And it was getting a little ridiculous. I mean, every time the scientist in me, I guess, that I saw them pop up, I had to run out there and photograph them. I thought, you know what, let me show the video to some of my friends and see if anybody knows somebody I can show it to. This is how close I was. A friend of a friend had a neighbor who had a friend who knew the past president of MUFON. And I thought, okay, great. I had never heard of MUFON, but I gave him a call at the time. And I told him, I have a picture from '95 that I know is authentic, but I'd like someone of credence to take a look at it and tell me what it is. And I was seeing these lights appear at a distance. He hadn't heard of it, but he refers me to a field investigator, MUFON field investigator, for the following Wednesday to meet him at his home, where he had his little office. And he calls up on Tuesday to say that the then state director, Tom Taylor, couldn't be there because his mom had died on Saturday and the funeral was Wednesday morning. Could we postpone? I said, whoa. I said, I really want to do this. I only have a window of opportunity at 10 a.m. on Friday morning for another 2-3 weeks. He said, fine. In the meantime, there were other people that were seeing them, just as I was, for days before. Steve Blonder actually called MUFON up to, I mean, MUFON's been involved with this from the day one, up to his balcony on March 13th. And they caught this arrowhead that is absolutely incredible. I mean, I always say the data speaks for itself. Just look at it. These lights are rock solid in a delta shape. Anyway, on March 13th, for anybody that doesn't know out there, I'm going to give you a brief little thing. Okay, on March 13th, when thousands of people were looking up at the sky purposely for a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet, they also caught a glimpse of Mile, and we just learned from Peter Davenport, director of the UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, that one of the craft, and we know now there were multiple craft, was 8 miles wide. Okay? And whatever you've heard, and that's one of the reasons I had to come forward, there is so much mis and disinformation out there. I had to set the record straight. Because when I pushed my professional, my accomplished medical career aside, I kept a daily diary of everything, And the point is that it was such technology that people were talking about. These huge craft, and there were 10 different craft, we'll get to that later, slowly, about 20, 30 miles an hour, gliding. As big as it was, no sound, totally silent. Some people saw it take off at blink speed. Other people saw these orbs. In fact, we have a pilot in the documentary, which I'm going to be showing at 12 noon today upstairs for free for anybody that's not going to the panel luncheon. He was looking up like a canned light, he would call it. The light did not reflect, and some people saw these orbs detach from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock with it later. Is that what happened to my husband and I in '95? I leave that up to you. In the meantime, some of them split, and by the way, it wasn't just 1 or 2 events. I heard some people talking about that last night. It was many events over a dozen hours, starting at 3 p.m. in the afternoon in Arizona, 5 p.m. hour, Native Americans in New Mexico, 7 o'clock hour in California it was seen, 8:30, by the way, and you'll hear a little of the recorded report. An alleged crewman called the UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, very detailed, that jets were actually sent out from Luke Air Force Base to intercepting a gun camera film, which we heard that they did, for one of these craft was hovering right over Central Phoenix, 7th Avenue and Indian School. And as they approached, the lights dimmed, and then the whole thing disappeared, freaking out one of the pilots, by the way. And Luke Air Force Base was on lockdown after that. And there were civilians that saw this happening. And they said after the military left, the craft reappeared and then continued on its way over the airport. Incredible, incredible technology, to be sure, that we haven't seen in over 20 years. The media, okay. Well, on Friday morning, I'm knocking at the MUFON door for the MUFON field investigator. The first thing he says when he opens his door, "Did you see the mass sighting last night?" I said, "Well, I saw something similar to 2 months ago. In fact, I got video of it." He said, "Fabulous." He says, "You don't understand. Hundreds, maybe thousands of people saw these mile-wide V-shaped formations of lights, and some people saw craft, and NBC was coming to interview him in a half an hour." I said, "Whoa. We don't know what we're dealing with here," and they might recognize me. I did health reporting for them in the early 80s. I don't know if it's a hoax or military or whatever, but it's not about me. It's never been about me. It's about the data. And I said, "You know what, take a copy of the video so people can see what we saw last night. I'm out of here." In the meantime, I called the air traffic controllers. Not only did they say they saw the same thing at the same time as I was filming it, over Class B restricted airspace again, but a private pilot called in to say, "What the hell are these lights in front of me?" I even have it in my book, and I'll talk about that private pilot a little later. Well, that afternoon, the next day, after the mass sighting, I was sitting in front of my VCR and television, waiting to see if anybody was going to talk about the lights over Phoenix. Starting at 4 p.m., every news station, it was the big news, and every news station was showing my video. And this is just a snippet from the video. Again, here's those house lights. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's those skylights here. That's where I was taking the video. And mine are the 3 endpoints of a giant V or triangle. By 9 o'clock, this is Steve Blonder's and the MUFON group's arrowhead there of 5 lights. And by the way, Steve and I took our video before 10 o'clock. The boomerangs were after 10 o'clock, and they've really become, especially this particular one, controversial for being flares, which, by the way, was the only explanation that came forward a month after a June 18th front page USA Today article, and we didn't have social media at the time. Overnight, it went viral. We had media from all over the world deluge on Phoenix, asking, once they talked to the witnesses, their descriptions were so detailed and so heartfelt that they too were asking, why isn't there an investigation? Why isn't there an explanation? And there was nothing for months, nothing. And then suddenly, a month later, and they had to come up with something for the handful of videos. It was the only hard evidence they had. And we can go into a whole discussion, which we won't have time today. But the witness reports they could blow off and say they didn't know what they were looking at, or it was a helicopter, whatever they come up with. But they couldn't blow off the hard evidence. So anyway, somebody was really, really brilliant and came up with the flare theory. Well, Councilwoman Frances Barwood was the only elected official during a council meeting in May, who asked innocently, because she got hundreds and hundreds of calls from her constituents, why isn't there an investigation? They asked for one, and she was plastered to the wall. I mean, the ridicule and the snickering and the discrediting at the time was rampant. I was very happy that I stayed anonymous. But she came out 3 years after to run for Secretary of State on a platform to get answers for the lights over Phoenix as a public safety issue, and also was asking publicly for a reenactment. And lo and behold, we get 3 Air National Guards right before the 3rd anniversary, send off flares to show everybody the Phoenix lights. Well, you'll see. Okay, it put the nail in the coffin. They had their shot. It has never been reenacted, never explained. Now, talking about inspiring young people, future generations, at the time, there were very few people that knew what I had, not even a handful. And one of them was a very good friend of mine. And her son was in high school, and he knew what was happening too, and he was really into it. And he said to me, because he was also into filmmaking, he said, would you like to incorporate some of these videos? Nobody has these videos because they're not available anymore. Would you like to put a little montage together? I said, well, that would be terrific. We worked on it for a couple years, and actually till the 3rd anniversary, when I just couldn't keep anonymous for 2 reports, as you'll see. I had to let people know that there was much more to the story than just March 13th, and also show the difference between my video, the footage of the anomalous aerial phenomena, and flares. And by the way, he's a big editor in Adam Finberg in Hollywood now.
Arizona have visitors from another galaxy, or was it a military exercise? Last night, people all over Arizona say they saw a UFO. People say they saw strange lights all over the state. A Paradise Valley resident caught these unexplained lights on videotape. Take a look at that. Well, they appear to be near South Mountain. You can see 3 lights there, and just one by one, they're going to disappear. See that?
Aside, an unexplainable series of strange bright lights seen over the skies of Arizona gets a lot of people wondering what the heck they saw. UFO watchers are calling it a dramatic event.
And folks who witnessed this strange sighting are calling it simply unexplainable.
It is very rare for thousands of people to call and report seeing the same lights in the same spot at the same time. It happened last night, and eyewitnesses who saw it say it's like nothing they've ever seen before.
Observer reported that when one turned, they all turned together, as if by the same command.
Even a commercial airline pilot here at Sky Harbor Airport reported seeing the lights last night. He radioed the tower just after takeoff, telling them that the object was directly above him. That means that air traffic controllers in the tower should have picked the object up on their radar screens. And yet they say they saw nothing.
We checked with the FAA today, we checked with Sky Harbor, we checked with Luke Air Force Base, and there's been no official explanation of those strange bright lights last night.
Phoenix, Arizona, 1997. It began March 13th. Residents had observed strange lights in the sky for the preceding 3 nights, which were captured on this short tape. Then at 9:45 p.m. on the 13th, thousands of people witnessed this amazing display. Tom King, a local resident, captured it on tape.
Major sighting here.
I've never seen it. Look at that.
This isn't like stuff I'm normally seeing. This is extraordinary. You look at it and go, that's not an aircraft. We were perplexed the whole time trying to figure out, what is this thing?
As the tape rolled, 5 lights blinked on in sequence, offering an outline of a flying object as it hovered near the mountains. Bill Hamilton, a resident, was with King as he taped the lights.
This was a very significant mass sighting because at least one of these objects was seen traveling down diagonally the entire state of Arizona. Thousands of witnesses, several videotapes, hundreds of phone calls were made to local television stations, to local police stations.
That same evening, insurance salesman Mike Kristen was at home with his wife when he recorded this astonishing video of the same event from 40 miles away.
I saw a single point of light farther to the east on the mountains than I've ever seen before. All of a sudden, another sequence of lights started to form to the right of it. And I happened to be catching everything. This whole entire sequence came on.
They're very large, larger than any light in the city.
Take a look at the footage. I'm not telling you what they are. If it was an alien spacecraft, there's something out there that they can't defend us against.
Amazingly, a third video was shot simultaneously, showing the same lights going out in order.
It's an amazing thing. This is a huge sighting that happened.
By inputting the video into a computer, image processor Jim Dilatoso was able to determine what the Phoenix UFOs looked like.
Now we have 3D mountains and topology that we can swing around and look at it from different angles. We feel very certain that the object, tip to tip, is more than a mile long.
National newspapers soon carried front-page stories of the enormous V-shaped object seen over Phoenix. But the local military base did nothing to calm the fears of the 10,000 residents who were startled by what they saw. A Phoenix councilwoman, Frances Barwood, has called for an investigation into the strange lights.
There's people that were active military that were afraid to say publicly what they saw because they had been told that it would be the end of their career.
Barwood seems to believe some evidence at least points to a close encounter of the very unusual kind. Evidence like a taped conversation between a so-called Air Force airman and the director of the National UFO Reporting Center. Westmoreland played excerpts from the tape few people have heard.
One of the pilots stated that they have visual on it, they've got gun camera film of it, they have no radar tape of it. It scared the hell out.
Skywatch International says what witnesses described did not fit conventional aircraft. At least one caller agreed.
I know what we saw. It was definitely not from this planet.
Demands for an explanation got so great, even national news programs picked up on the story.
Weird happenings in the skies over Phoenix recently. Hundreds of people in the Phoenix area, indeed all over the state, reported seeing something rather unusual hovering in the night sky. And no one seems to be able to explain what it was.
And now, as Brian Rudy reports, there is that incident this year on the 13th of March.
One thing not in question, a lot of people saw and some took pictures of something that looked like this cluster of bright lights over Phoenix. Witnesses who claim to have had a better look described a delta-shaped craft. This family says it flew slowly and silently over their house.
The tip literally came right across our street, and the right arm went right over us, just like a subway train, watching it go by. The first light, the second light, third light.
The first report of a strange flying object came at about 8:20 that night from a former police officer in Paulden, Arizona. Over the next 40 minutes, people gave similar reports of an object along a 200-mile route south to Phoenix and Tucson.
That's where thousands of people saw more than stars in the night sky. Doug Bruckner has more on the most amazing UFO sighting ever in tonight's Top Copy.
If ever there was something in the sky that could shut skeptics up once and for all, it's these strange lights that appeared so ominously over Arizona.
These lights were brilliant golden amber in color, and they had a triangular formation.
Thousands of dazed desert dwellers saw this UFO, and they are bombarding authorities with panic calls.
And why isn't our government giving us the answer? The Phoenix Police Department was swamped with calls that night, but even they were left in the dark about the lights.
To my knowledge, there was nothing that we ever came up with an explanation. And the question is still out there. What was it, and has anybody solved that mystery?
There are a few things that I think we can rule out. I think we can rule out any kind of conventional aircraft, any kind of rocket or missile. I think we can also rule out a meteor or any kind of natural object coming into the Earth's atmosphere.
The same kinds of objects were also reportedly seen in Colorado and the Caribbean just last month.
They're reporting objects of similar shapes. They respond or fly in similar manners. That's very interesting to get the same story from roughly 20 countries around the world.
If Earth is being visited by people from other places, from other worlds, from other dimensions, they're speeding up the process right now. Something major is happening.
Is it a coincidence that our American presidents seem interested in UFOs? Before he was president, Jimmy Carter saw a UFO and even reported it to authorities. Subsequent presidents also expressed their concern about visitors from outer space.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Astronaut Story Musgrave feels that whether or not the government has covered up the existence of UFOs, our nation is ready to handle the truth, whatever that might be.
I think the public is ready to accept any information. I think the public is ready to know if anyone has visited us. They can accept that, and they want it.
Tomorrow is March 13th, not a holiday, just another Monday. But 3 years ago, it was a night to remember.
Something happened over Arizona that some experts say is the most important UFO sighting of all time. Only on Fox, the Fox 10 investigators reveal a new witness and new facts about that night. Here's Steve Filmer.
There's a lot more to the story than just March 13th.
This is not video from the night of March 13th, 1997.
I don't know what they are, but I know that they are.
A Paradise Valley doctor says she took this footage March 5th. And nearly 2 months before this, she snaps these photos.
As I'm ready to shoot the 3 in a row, suddenly 6 lights across appear in an equidistant line. It was startling. Not only was it a massive span, more than a mile wide, in retrospect, it was the same formation in the same location as March 13th, but this was January 23rd, 97.
This is what many saw and videotaped on March 13th, and what started all the fuss. Here, a simple rendering of what that thing may have looked like. Huge, moving, hovering, changing.
All I know is that as I saw the stars being wiped out, one by one, as this big triangular black mass moved through the sky, it was just tremendous.
Some reported orange lights, some reported white lights. Some said 5 lights, others said 7.
I'm really taking a chance here, I am, and I know that I am coming forward.
Dr. Lynn, a Paradise Valley physician licensed with the state, says she's seen such things around the Phoenix Valley as far back as 1995.
Being criticized, being ridiculed, being discredited. It was a scary proposition to come forward, to say the least.
It was dramatic. It involved one or more extremely unusual, let's call them bizarre objects.
Peter Davenport runs the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle. These are some of the actual drawings and renderings witnesses of the Phoenix lights have filed.
What's often overlooked about that night is that many people say they saw things separate of this craft. Some witnesses say they saw orange or amber balls of light.
January of 97, I happened to notice 3 huge amber balls, orbs, of light in a row, equidistant from each other, far west behind the city.
Here is a rendering of those balls of light as she and others have described them.
You could see this huge orange ball of light. It was completely coherent. There was no kind of flaring of the light around it. It was very precise.
We both watched the top orb seem to disappear in place. It didn't budge at all, but it was like a dimmer switch. The only thing I can liken it to is going to another dimension.
We have pilots, we have attorneys, we have physicians, we have architects, we have members of law enforcement, we have air traffic controllers, all of whom saw the same thing at the same time. This was probably the most dramatic UFO event that I've ever heard about.
It's opened my consciousness up to realize that, you know, we have to share the universe. I don't believe that we are alone.
If it wasn't benevolent, we'd know about it a long time ago.
The question remains, what was it? I'm unable to answer that with any accuracy or with any certainty of being correct.
I don't know. I don't know. I hope they come back. When they do, it's very exciting. First off, my husband, who is also a physician, and myself had no interest or knowledge of the topic before our first sighting, which was very close to our home, literally and figuratively, right outside our bedroom window. Okay, this is the footage that I took at 10 o'clock on March 13th. They slowly disappeared, and again, the video doesn't do it justice. In real life, they're huge. It was extraordinary, very different than anything we'd ever seen.
Rumors circulated about a cosmic cover-up. The government might be hiding something. Finally, on March 13th, 2000, 3 years after the Phoenix Lights sightings, the National Guard put on an air show to demonstrate that the 1997 Phoenix Lights were in fact Air Force flares and not UFOs. They parachuted down several flares in various V-shaped formations, but many thought the shapes of the flares didn't match up with the lights seen back in 1997. They noticed that many of the flares flickered and moved erratically, as opposed to the 1997 lights, which were much bigger and didn't flicker.
This is a close-up of flares, the flare drop that night. You can see they are definitely not amber orbs, and they do not stay in formation. And this is my video, again, quite significant. They stay in a line, they're equidistant from each other.
Look, UFO is unidentified flying object, and nobody doubts that there are reports of things that people can't identify. The question isn't what are UFOs, the question is are any UFOs intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft?
Great question. In fact, I've been saying for years, it's time we get this topic out in the open. Address it, accept it, and study it so we can find out who's driving these things as well as move forward in our own evolution. And boy, did the media, after this happened, really move forward. And it's been an incredible, incredible journey with the media, particularly the news media, TV news media. The print media was far less kind until I came forward in 2004. Now, when I was working in the early 80s at NBC, a lot of the people that were just starting out there were now in 2004 the head of the news department at CBS or the head of the production at Fox, and they used to call the person that had the film, Village Labs called the person that had the film of the Phoenix Lights, Dr. X. They said, "You're Dr. X, well, come on over." And they are a model for what should happen. They take this topic seriously. And we've had blimps, we've had balloons, we've had, in fact, right before the 10th anniversary, the military, for some reason, sent off a line of flares, and people were mistaking them for the real deal. And the news media was calling me off the hook. And I said, "Oh, don't get so excited. It was flares. You could, with a trained eye, you could see they were drifting down, and they had smoke trails through the camera. But it was a perfect opportunity to show, especially young people, the difference between flares and the true unknowns." In fact, right after, and I hope we have time, because I really want you guys to stick around for the last 3 videos that are amazing. This is one of the best videos, because every year the story involves, how much time do we have, do you know? Right. The story involves, and we try to teach the audience the difference, because there's still rumors flying around, and this was a terrific report.
Major sighting here on the 13th of March. Weird happenings in the skies over Phoenix.
And no one seems to be able to explain what it was.
It is still one of the biggest mysteries ever in the city of Phoenix, and now it's been 17 years since the Phoenix Lights appeared over the valley.
And tonight, a brand new interview and a brand new look at what those lights might have been. Our Jared Dillingham has this story.
You're not going to stop me. There they are.
LYNNE KITEI shot some of the most famous video of the Phoenix Lights 17 years ago this week.
I don't know what they were, but I know that they were.
Thousands witnessed the formation of orbs gliding through the night sky. KITEI produced a book and documentary on the lights and hosts an annual festival at the Harkins Theater in Scottsdale. New at it this year, a Prescott man's memories have been turned into this new graphic, which depicts a boomerang-shaped object flying slowly over northern Arizona.
He also saw it pass right over Prescott and cover Prescott. That is awesome.
She does not believe any of the common explanations, including the B-2 stealth bomber explanation.
Every one of them was absolutely silent.
So no stealth bomber. You would have heard it, you say?
Yeah.
There's the military flare theory.
You're telling me that flares actually traverse the entire state in a rock-solid, equidistant, mile-wide V formation for hours?
Some believe the lights were a hoax, pilots flying in formation.
There is no way, and we've talked to pilots and we've talked to military, that airplanes, number one, could even hold that formation for so long.
And finally, the weather balloon theory.
What about weather balloons?
Please.
So she's still searching for answers 17 years later.
People were in awe. People were mesmerized.
And people still are mesmerized by the mystery.
And so are people around the globe.
Phoenix Lights had
Loud?
national news that happened about it, not dismissing it. Not only was it a very significant mass sighting, many investigators call it the largest sighting ever, lasting the longest amount of time, seen by the largest number of people. Grand scale. But at another level, global media. It was all over the news everywhere for a long time, months and months. And then every year, it gets on the media again because there's something significant about it.
And just to show you really quick, I mean, I have done hundreds and hundreds, not only in the United States, that's unsealed, but for French TV, for India TV. The top physicist from China came and we did a whole briefing, and he showed me the same exact phenomena over China. Last year I was contacted by Hawaii 5.0, anybody that watches that show. My video is on the computer there. This is a new show that's going to be produced in Canada and the Science Channel, taking it seriously. No more snickering, no more discrediting, and in fact, inspiring young people not only to take the Phoenix Lights seriously, but also the whole Phoenix Lights reality seriously. And interestingly, our former Governor Fife Symington must have been inspired after 10 years of positive feedback, at least after I came forward, and he came forward right after the 10th anniversary of the Phoenix Lights to disclose a very riveting and important announcement that not only was a first for an elected official, but also took the Phoenix Lights to the next credible level.
Our next sighting even got a governor in on the act. He tried to make a joke of it at first, but ended up admitting that he just couldn't explain what he saw. But that didn't stop the military from trying. We have saved the best and one of the best known UFOs caught on tape for last. It is our #1 close encounter.
March 13th, 1997, everyone was out under the night sky to get a glimpse of the Hale-Bopp comet, which was passing over.
But there was something else passing over the sky that night as well.
It was awesome and amazing. It originally started out as the 6 points of light in a mile-wide span. I grabbed the camera and I got outside. By the time I focused the camera, 3 had disappeared, and I caught the 3 above the city like a giant triangle.
What Dr. LYNNE Kitei and thousands of others saw that night would become known as the Phoenix Lights, one of the most famous and well-documented UFO sightings ever.
The footage does not do it justice, okay? In the footage, they're much smaller, they're white. I call them an orb because the light did not extend outside the edge, and the color within each orb was a uniform amber color throughout. It didn't glare at all. These were very mesmerizing, very soothing, and as I was watching these, I have to admit that it seemed that there was an intelligence looking back at me.
While Dr. Kitei saw lights moving in formation, others throughout the state reported seeing something even more otherworldly.
This very large delta-shaped craft flew 200-mile course and was witnessed by hundreds, if not thousands, of people.
It passed right in front of us. 5 lights that were a V.
You're not going to believe what I saw. And he was amazed by what he heard.
If we opened up a newspaper, you could not block out the object that we saw.
And these are very unambiguous, up-close sighting of a craft, not lights, not flares. This is the craft that flew directly overhead people. One of the kids I talked to said he could have hit it with a rock, it was so low.
Whoever did this wanted to be seen.
And they were seen by Dr. Kitei again and again and again, nearly a dozen times over the next decade. But after the initial mass sighting in 1997, everyone wanted to get to the bottom of those mysterious lights. Everyone, it seemed, except the authorities.
For months, there was no investigation. There was no explanation. They just blew it off.
But then Governor Fife Symington announced he would launch an investigation, and at an unscheduled press conference claimed authorities had uncovered the source of the Phoenix Lights. The public waited with bated breath for the governor to reveal the evidence. Okay, it turns out the investigation was really just the governor's idea of a joke. And the evidence, that's just his aide, dressed up as an alien.
This almost hysterical environment that was building it. I just decided that this is a great opportunity to go add some levity to the situation.
Who says you can't trust the government?
It really offended many, many, many people.
And Arizonans still did not have an explanation to the lights until...
About a month later, the flare theory emerged.
The military revealed that on March 13th, a National Guard unit had been undergoing a training mission that involved the dropping of flares. Try telling one of the eyewitnesses that all they saw were military flares.
That's not what we witnessed or documented. I mean, flares cannot cannot keep a formation. They drift with the wind, they float haphazardly, they have huge smoke trails that are illuminated by the flare itself.
I'm not saying it's an alien spacecraft, but don't tell me it was a military flare, because that's an insult to everybody.
Speaking of insulting eyewitnesses, it turns out that the governor may not be as skeptical as he appeared at that press conference.
I met with Governor Fife-Simonton. He said, you know what? I saw that thing too.
Wait, he what?
And it clearly had a shape to it, and a big shape, and it was a constant shape. And you can't control flares that way. There's just no way they were flares.
So the ex-governor, who was also an ex-Air Force pilot, saw the craft that night in Phoenix, just like all the other eyewitnesses. But does his pedigree carry any clout with the skeptics?
Fife-Simonton is an interesting case. Obviously, he's a thoughtful, intelligent man and a responsible person and a pilot, so he knows what he's looking at.
I think the fact that thousands of witnesses have come forward to date saying we saw this craft, I just don't think we can dismiss all that testimony.
I saw these things up close and personal, and no one can say that I didn't see what I saw. It cannot be explained or denied. Okay. Besides the media, I felt it was important to get the book out there. Came out with the first edition of the book, The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone, which is now in its third print. It just keeps on evolving. And actually, some parents saw me at a Borders, Barnes & Noble presentation, and I couldn't believe that they asked me in 2004 to come to speak to their school. And here, I had been inundated with filmmakers who wanted to do a documentary, but I didn't have any time, and I thought, oh, geez, I stayed anonymous for 7 years. I didn't know if anybody would come forward. And as it turned out, when I walked in to that auditorium, there were 200 middle school students. You could hear a pin drop. And after I showed them a 15-minute video, they wouldn't stop clapping. And it was the first time that I realized that not only do they thirst, young people thirst for this knowledge, but there is nothing in our history books. So I proceeded to start. I was at the Arizona Heart Institute, had to make a choice. I decided to finish the documentary. We've won over a dozen international film festival awards. We finally got a distributor, a mainstream distributor. I waited till I got one in December of 2007. He decided that it would take a few months before the documentary would be on the shelves of Blockbuster in Hollywood. And I said, why a Tuesday? He said, so it's, you know, it's up on the shelves. And as luck would have it, or coincidence, there was another sighting on April the 21st. And then by then we had social media, and it went viral overnight. It was #1 on Drudge Report. Unbelievable coverage. When was our documentary released to the public? On April 22nd, the very next morning. Now, you can't tell me that's not a coincidence. I don't care who did it. But it was flying off the shelves internationally. It was unbelievable. And it was the first for ufology to be in theaters and also to show on Time Warner and Comcast and Dish Network. And it was #1 on Netflix and iTunes under documentaries for some time. And every year I host the only mainstream that we know event for people around the anniversary, the Scottsdale Harkin Shea Theater, where it premiered in 2005. We had sold-out houses every single year. And as you can see, there are children. We always have children. And not only are they reading my book and doing book reports, that's how I felt the young teacher who I've now been working with on our curriculum. We sell out every year, and actually this year Starshine Academy had a contest of the top students. There were 6 students who came as our guests, and we have, after the screening, presentations. We have Navajo Rangers who are law enforcement who are now studying seriously these phenomena, as well as that's the filmmaker that I worked with, Francis Barwood. We have a Zuni elder. We have another MD who I talk about in the book, who has, for the first time after 21 years, shared his story with his family. There is Travis Walton, who was our guest most every year, and one of the, Jim Delatoso, one of the investigators, as well as Rebecca Hardcastle, psychologist, to educate the mainstream, not only us, but also young people. And that's where education comes in. Going back to my passion, last 7 years I've been working on a curriculum to get into the classroom. My AIDS, teen pregnancy, and substance abuse prevention education programs are distributed by Discovery Education. I'm trying to get this one into it. It's not
easy, let me tell you. So last year for the 20th anniversary, I actually got together 21 years in the making of an overview based on the Phoenix Lights, a graphic novel and activities coloring book for all ages. It's totally sold out. My books are totally sold out too, so please take a look on Amazon. All the stuff is available on there if you care for it. But I wanted to inspire not only young people, but teachers and parents and grandparents to do this along with their young family and friends. The Phoenix Lights, UFOs, and Crop Circle Coloring Book, graphic novel adventures of Sue F.O., Field Observer, and Hugh F.O., and he's a little alien. And we had a Disney illustrator, teachers, we had pilot programs, the kids gave us feedback, as well as David Wisby is a map maker, and he's also a crop circle specialist. And we base it on the story of the Phoenix Lights. We have a black and white version and a color version where we also incorporate some of the color pictures, and then of course black and white, so you can color it in. And during a baseball game, these kids not only saw, and I give both sides, I try to give the skeptic side as well as the believer side, these orbs actually detach from the main craft and then redocked with it. Here's a black and white. And by the way, they're on the Phoenix Lights Network website. 12-year study. Michael Tanner and other investigators, Bill Hamilton, some of you know him from MUFON, actually from thousands of reports from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, Arizona MUFON, Village Labs, which was the computer lab clearinghouse, and Frances Barwood, Councilwoman Frances Barwood, had over 1,000 reports. It was concluded there were 10 different craft. Now, whether it was one craft that could morph, or the perspective from where the person was standing, or an actual parade, and this is just from 8 to 9 on March 13th, you can see how many things were happening. There were multiple things happening at the same time. Now, I'm not going to have time to show you this animation, but please go to the GAP page, Geospatial Animation Project page on the Phoenix Lights Network. There are animations as well, and it really, I mean, just to watch them, you get the feeling of being there. These are some of the, and just a sampling of the different craft, and they're very different. Here we have one that actually was taken on video 1 month before our mass sighting in St. Petersburg, Russia. Here's another one right near Sky Harbor Airport, 3 miles wide. This one had the orb that detached and actually split, and both craft shot up into the air, and pilots actually saw this oval shaped as well. It's a budget school the next day. We get into the different sides of it because we have the skeptics there as well. And then the teacher advises Sue, who's really into it, to be a field investigator and go to the History Museum, which she does, and she learns about petroglyphs and the Native American connection, and she meets up with Hugh, who teaches her about the different iconic pictures. And I try to, and this is just a sampling, I try to really incorporate, because I really want this to get into the mainstream and into the classroom as well, which, by the way, there's going to be someone here that's going to take it into a school here in Philadelphia this coming September. Anyway, I try to pick the most iconic pictures. Here you have the picture from the oh, please, I can't be 5 minutes. Will you stick around, because I have 3 unbelievable videos for you guys. These are Foo Fighters, same as what we saw. This is World War II, same as what we saw outside our window. Of course, we have pilot Kenneth Arnold and the 52 sighting around the Capitol, Belgium, and UK. Here's another craft at St. Petersburg, so they had similar. By the way, my video was analyzed, the time and the exact location, by an Orion specialist, and said that it looks exactly the same. The Orion belt. And if you watch Ancient Aliens, you know that they believe that we were seated here by the Orion constellation beings. It was right above my video as I was taking it. Of course, we go into the flare, true unknowns versus flares, not even close, true unknowns versus flares. And then Sue goes back to tell the class what she saw, and she goes to the Science Museum. And at that point, she's learning about crop circles. And we talk about the history, the difference between real ones and man-made, and I tried to incorporate, this one blew me away because it was handed to me by a senior math professor at ASU, who not only said that, I mean, this is just what my husband and I saw, the pyramid, but he analyzed it for the curriculum and said that there were infinite number of equilateral triangles in this one very simple looking crop circle, and there's been orbs on top of crop circles. We talk about that as well before they're formed, and I tried to put the most credible. Here we have the pictures of them, and then on top that were taken, real pictures, and then we have the crop circles to draw. And as you can see, I mean, even the 3D just blow you away. Now, not only that, but we have games and puzzles, from easy to hard, from mazes, and we have words, spiral words, crossword puzzles, magical circles. This one is a sacred geometry, and you gives the answers. So we have the answers for those who are challenged, like myself. And finally, we end it with trying to inspire whoever the reader is to look into more. The search has just begun. And the Phoenix Light story has evolved, continues to evolve. I just added a new chapter with a picture, the first that I've ever shared it to the public in 21 years, that actually prompted me to come forward. So I hope you take a look at that. It is incredible. And the documentary has, we have a few of them left, I think a handful left, has bonus features. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell talks about the cover-up he's in the documentary itself, he was being conferred with while it was going on. And of course, we've evolved. And do you want to see these? Because Nick Pope is in this. This just happened. Would you like to see this? It's amazing. It just happened last month. I'm going to play this for you.
NASA just announced it has discovered organic materials, the building blocks of life, all the way on Mars. But that's not the only fascinating space-related news to come out recently. According to a newly leaked Pentagon report, in 2004, a U.S. aircraft carrier was stalked for several days by a UFO that witnesses said resembled a supersonic tic-tac. The object reportedly could hover in midair and make itself invisible. This shocked to confuse the Navy pilots who monitored it. Nick Pope is a journalist and investigated UFO sightings for the British government. He joins us tonight. Nick, why would information like this, I know you've seen this a million times, but why would we need to read about it because it was leaked? Why wouldn't the U.S. government tell us this? Is there some reason?
Well, I think there's always embarrassment about anything in our airspace that performance characteristics exceed anything in our own inventory. And that, by the way, was the conclusion in this Pentagon document. This thing ran rings around our F-18 Super Hornets that tried to chase this thing. It was briefly tracked on radar, but then it seemed to be able to, and this again is a phrase from the document, it's almost like it cloaked itself and became invisible. You'd think this was science fiction if you weren't reading it in Pentagon documents. And we know now, which we didn't know before, that the government took this very seriously, and these things are being seen in our skies, whatever they might be, by pilots tracked on radar, and there's a serious defense and national security issue here.
And just to be clear, we don't believe that any other country possesses the technology to create an aircraft like this, right?
Absolutely correct, yes. One of the things that went into this report was obviously looking to see if this sort of thing was anything in our own inventory, and indeed anything that any other nation has. I mean, certainly when I was investigating UFOs for the British government, we knew that some of these things would turn out to be secret prototype aircraft, drones and missiles, but we always knew through our own intelligence sources, you know, who has what, so you can eliminate that.
So what you're really saying is that the U.S. government and the British government have essentially concluded that there's something not from this world that humans did not create that is being tracked on radar and watched by people who watch aircraft for a living. I mean, this is real.
It is real. Now, the government doesn't go so far as to say these things are extraterrestrial, but certainly when I was doing this for the Ministry of Defense, our policy statement said neither do we rule out that possibility. We said that we kept an open mind on this. But of course, you know, these things, when their speeds and maneuvers are in excess of anything that you've got or anything that you're aware other nations have, you are forced almost to think the unthinkable. And absolutely. Part of the problem with this, of course, was just that senior political figures and military chiefs often just said UFOs, and they rolled their eyes, and it was the ridicule factor.
This seems like
we were able to say...
I'm sorry, we're out of time, Nick, but this just seems...
Okay. I'm just going to briefly mention celebrities, because that's the other thing that's really important to inspire young people. They listen to everything. We know the Beatles, we know Michael Jackson saw UFOs. They talked about it, other celebrities as well. Well, remember I told you about a private pilot that was coming into Sky Harbor that saw the 6 lights in front of me and called the tower and said, what the hell are those lights in front of me? Well, I'm going to show you a video. He just came forward after 21 years, and he is a huge, huge star.
Before she shows the video, before she shows the video, I just need to let you know that the Lunch and Learn panel is beginning now, and Lynn asked if she could go over a few minutes. She'll be going to that panel. Nick Pope, who you just saw, is on that panel with Bob Wood. That's in the terrorist room. So if you want to join that now, you can leave quietly, and Lynn will be in there in 5 minutes. She wants to show you this one last video.
Yeah, I only have 2 little wonderful videos to show you, so thank you for sticking around. I'll walk along with you. Okay, you'll hear it from himself.
May be able to help me, and this may feature, who knows? Because this is an international story. Because of you both being here, I looked into the international files. Not covered by our Ministry of Defense, but maybe covered by yours. This took place in Arizona. An unidentified pilot, according to the press cuttings, flying near an airport in Arizona with his son when he spotted 6 lights in the night sky. So he called from the airplane to air traffic control to say, I'm seeing these lights here. I wasn't expecting any other planes. They're none supposed to be on my landing path. Can you tell me what's going on? They said there are no other planes. He said, I'm seeing 6 bright lights coming towards me. Mystery unresolved.
Except, tail number for that plane was Bonanza 2 Tango Sierra, and I was the pilot. No way. Oliver and I.
Yes, take us back. Doesn't say that in the briefing.
Oliver and I.
I should have read to the end.
Oliver and I were flying in. I was flying him to go see his girlfriend, and we were on approach, and I saw 6 lights over the airport in absolute uniform in a V shape, and Oliver said to me, I was just looking at him, and I was coming in. We're maybe a half a mile out, and Oliver said, "Pa, what are those lights?" And I then it kind of like came out of my reverie, and I said, "I don't know what they are." I said, he said, "Are we okay here?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna call him," and I reported it. And they said, "We're not painting anything. We don't show anything." I said, "Well, okay, I'm going to declare it's unidentified, it's flying, and it's 6 objects." We landed. I taxied, dropped him off, took off, went back to LA. Never said a word. He never said a word. I never thought of it. 2 years later, Goldie is watching a television show when I came home. Yeah. And the show is on UFOs. But as I came home, "Hey, honey, how's it going?" And I'm kind of hearing the TV going, and I stopped and I started watching, and it was on that event. Now, that was the most viewed UFO event. Over 20,000 people saw that. And I'm watching this, and I'm feeling like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It's like, why do I know this, you know? What? And it's not clear to me. And finally I said, then they said the pilot reported it, a general aviation pilot reported it on landing. I'd never thought of it since then, and I said, that was me. That was me. And I said, wait a minute, I'll go to my logbooks. So I went to my logbooks, and there was the flight at that time, and I didn't mention anything about the UFO. The fascinating part of that to me is that it just went literally out of my head. And Oliver never mentioned it. And had I not seen that show, I'd have never thought of it again.
Amazing.
Now, that to me was the weird part.
Believe it now, Chris?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm convinced. It's unidentified. It's just unidentified. It's flying, and it's not.
May be able to help.
Okay, and lastly, inspiring future generations from children themselves. I thought when I made the documentary in 2004, it was imperative to also include the thoughts and the words of children. And I've kind of compiled a few of them that are in our documentary. We're showing the documentary for free at noon today, and I'll be there afterwards if anybody has questions, a Q&A, but from the mouth of babes.
It's important that children know more about UFOs so they know more about other living beings.
Found out that I was definitely being visited by other intelligent life.
I would probably feel like really cool, like honored that like other life forms were visiting me of all people.
There are so many stars and probably other planets out there that the scientists haven't even seen yet.
They aren't the same as us, but nobody's the same as anybody.
I would only tell the friends that that are trusted by me, and probably other people would make fun of me because unless they see it with their own eyes, some humans just don't believe things.
We should probably explore more about space and focus our technologies in other ways besides war.
I think they would be kind of concerned about what we're doing to our planet because we're polluting it, we're trashing it, and we're doing all other things to it, like doing wars so the land gets all messed up too.
It's important for people to keep their hearts open for people from other planets.
It's also important for all of us to keep our hearts and our minds open to the wondrous possibilities that the Phoenix Lights has opened up for us all. And I hope today that the Phoenix Lights inspired each one of you to keep looking up. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for staying. Thank you.